Let's move on to the Unit 3 Environmental Science. So the first one, natural resources. So the resources exist without actions of humankind. For example, magnetic, gravitational, electrical properties. So the main thing is without action of humankind. These are all natural. And you have 5 important natural resources are there. So the first one, air, clean; water, fresh; soil, nutrient; and iron, used to build strong weapons, transport, buildings. We are using the iron. And if you take forest, provide clean air and preserve the ecology. Okay, next one, renewable. So renewable means used repeatedly. If it is not properly managed, what will happen? Leads to depleted. For example, forest, wind, water, etc. And next one, non-renewable. So this is limited. For example, fuel, minerals. And next one, forest resources. So in the forest resources, it includes living, that means tree, shrub, wildlife. And if you take non-living, so you have water, nutrient, rocks, sunlight, air. And what are the function? So first one is the productive. So in the productive, you have timber, charcoal. And if you see the protective, so watersheds, and aesthetic, good appearance, and recreational, picnic, and scientific. And then you have reduced pollution, and then hygienic, it will reduce the noise, and industrial develop. So these are all the main functions of forest resources. Okay, just a highlight. So natural resources, so this is without the action of human. So these are all natural, that is a magnetic, gravitational, electrical properties. And you have 5 important natural resources. What are they? One is air, water, soil, iron, forest. And renewable. So renewable means used repeatedly. So it is not properly managed, that leads to what will happen? Depleted. And non-renewable, limited, example fuels and minerals. And what are the functions? Protective, aesthetic, recreational, and then hygienic and industrial develop. And next one, uses. So under the uses, regulation of temperature, absorb solar radiation and reduce the global warming, and it will produce oxygen during the photosynthesis, and it helps to absorb the noise. And what are the ecological importance? So you'll get timber, fuel wood, raw material, food, and other like gums, oil, medicine, honey. So these are all very useful in the forest. And deforestation, you already know what you mean by deforestation. So permanent destruction of indigenous forest and woodlands. So we are cutting all the trees in the forest, that leads to permanent destruction. So what are the causes? Agriculture, you want to get in agriculture, logging, and then mining, urbanization. So you can able to see nowadays the rural people are moving to the urban people. So the forest or the landed area, so they are occupying. What are the effects? Climate change, animal, human, so those are affected, and soil erosion, floods are coming. So what is the solution? So reforestation, education, government has to give some of the regulation, and international projects you have to handle. So we have discussed uses, ecological importance. So what do you mean by deforestation? What are the causes? What are the effects? And what is the solution? The next one, water resources. So the rainwater. Second one, surface water. So under surface water, reservoir, rivers, streams, tanks, ponds. And if you move on to the groundwater, you have shallow, that is subsoil. And if you take deep, you can use the machine and you can tap. And then springs, so dry up quickly, so you need the deep spring. Okay, what are the uses? So concept 2, so in this irrigation you can use domestic and industrial purpose, and non-conceptive, recreational, hydroelectric power generation, you can use it. So this is about the water resources. And next one, rainwater harvesting. So this is used to conserve rainwater by collecting, storing, conveying, and purifying. So when you're getting the rainwater, so we are collecting, we are storing, and we are purifying, and we are using for the different purposes. What all the advantage? Less cost. So decreased demand for water. So it is easily available and then easy to install and operate also, and reduce the soil erosion, and no chemicals, free from all minerals. And what is the disadvantage? You need some technical skills and storage limit will be there. The next one is mineral resources uses. Minerals are used in almost all industries. So gold, liver, platinum, this we are using for your jewelry making. And copper, this is used in coin industries and for making pipes and for wires. And silicons, this is used in computer industries. And aluminum, this is used in aircraft and shipping. And what are the consequences of exploitation of mineral resources? The first one is the deforestation and wastage of upper soil layer and soil erosion. So continue with that. Greenhouse gas, it will be increasing, and how you will be managing. So efficient use and protections of mineral resources, and then reuse, recycle of metals. The next one, food resources, food. So this is helpful for our growth and development of for all the living organism. And next one is the food resources. So for example, food crops, livestock, aquaculture. And then if you take world food problem, what are the problems we are getting? Undernutrition and then malnutrition because of lack of food. And then what are the major problems? Marasmus, kwashiorkor, anemia, pellagra. And what are the food problems you are getting? Population growth, poverty, and poor agricultural practices, and wastage of food, loss of genetic diversity. Now they are making some of the hybrid varieties, so the genetic diversities are occurring, and food security, that is lined with the population control to the family welfare program. So these are the food problem. And next one, how to overcome this problem? So how to overcome food resources problem? So for starting, institutional support for small farmers, and then environmental friendly farming method we have to use. So avoid all the chemicals, and preventions of water and land degradation, and then protecting the genetic diversity. So avoid the hybrid varieties, and population control. So this is very important, population control, and altered food sources ecosystem we have to maintain, and maintain the biodiversity. So the overall food resources, you have to write about food and food resources, then food problem, and then major problem, and because of food what are all the problems we are getting, and how to overcome this problem. Next, move on to the energy resources. So energy, so where you're getting the energy? From the sun. So sun is the primary energy sources, and the others are coal, petroleum products, water, nuclear power plants. These are all the energy resources. And then you have two types of energy resources. One is non-renewable and another one is the renewable. So what are the uses of energy? So where you're using? In residential, so and washing cloth and taking a showers, and commercially we are using for heating and then cooling, lighting, and then transportations we are used in aircraft, trains, ships, and pipelines. And renewable energy resources, for example, hydropower, solar, wind, and then biomass energy, and then ideal wave power, and then geothermal energy. And what are the impacts of energy resources? So impact means what are the problems? Okay, so coal emissions harms the trees. So what will happen when the coal is emitted? The trees are affected. This is the first one. And another one, oil production. So what will happen? Release a poisonous gas, that is a carbon dioxide, into the air. And second one, hydropower impacts the fish population, and it will change the water temperature also. So in the energy resources, about the sun, and two types of energy resources, non-renewable and renewable, and what are the uses of energies in residential, commercial, and transportation. And renewable energy resources, where you are using hydropower, solar, wind, biomass energy, tidal wave power, and then geothermal energy. So what are the impacts? The first one, the tree is affected, and second one, air is polluted, and third one, fish populations is affected, and final, water temperatures are affected. The next one is land resources. So the land resources uses for residential, agricultural, industrial, recreational purposes. And land uses. When you move to the land use, we are using for agriculture, residential, industrial, commercial, recreational, transportation, educational and institutional, and waste disposal, and aesthetic and historic landscape to tourist areas. So this is the uses for the land. And then land degradations, decline in quality and productivity of land. And what are the causes for the degradation? Deforestation and soil erosion, urbanization, industrial activities, mining, climate changes, natural disasters, and then invasive species, and then improper waste management. So these are all the causes for the land degradation. And then conservations of land resources. So what you have to do? So promote reforestation, and then integrated approach to the planning and management. So what all the management you can do? So you can able to see the zoning, and then sustainable development, and you can use the multidisciplinary collaborative. So you can collaborate with the other members. Okay, next move on to the role of nurse. So this is very important. So first one, you have to conserve energy. How you'll conserve the energy? Switch off the light, fan, and use a solar heater, and then dry cloth in sunlight, and use the pressure cooker for cooking, and then grow tree near house, so no need of AC, and use bicycles instead of the scooters, everything. And then conserve water. So in the conserve water, check water leaks, and reuse the soap water, and use minimum water, and watering the plant, and use the drip irrigation. Okay, so energy finish, water, and move on to the soil. How to conserve the soil? So grow different plant, sprinkle irrigations, and then conserve food resources. Don't waste food, and don't store large amount of food grains. And then conserve forest. Minimum use of paper and fuel, and avoid constructions of dam in the forest. So what is the role of nurse in conserve energy, conserve water, conserve soil, conserve food resources, conserve the forest? Okay, so this is about the land resources. So what are the uses, and the degradations, and then what are the causes, how to conserve, and what are the integrated approaches to the planning and management, and what are the different role of nurse. Next, move on to the grassland ecosystem. So here the presence of grass is 20%, and if you see the function, nutrient cycling, and then feedback control mechanisms are present, and then increase fertility of soil, and reduce leaching of minerals. And if you see the classifications, you have tropical grassland, and it grows in areas of moderate to low rainfall. And what all the animals you can see? Elephant, giraffe, and zebra, deer, and leopard. This is very common in this area. And if you see the temperature of this grassland, grass here is very short and also nutritious. And if you see the wild buffaloes, bison, antelopes are very common in this area. And next, move on to the desert ecosystem. So 50 centimeter a year, the rainfall measures will be possible, and then less vegetation, and it is very hard to survive also, because this is desert area, the rainfall will not be proper. And if you see the characteristic, so here acidity, and then dryness present, and very less rainfalls will be there. The less rainfall, precipitation, and the rainfall is a seasonal. and then occurs for a limited duration. Nearly 25 to 30 centimeter rainfalls will be there. An extreme temperature. The day is very hot and night and extremely cold. And velocity of wind very high and forms huge and sand dunes will be there. And scarcity of water due to the less rainfall. And if you see the humidity very low during the daytime and high during the nighttime. And then the quality of soil, it is dry rock, thin gray color, so no organic contents like nitrogen, phosphorus. And if you see the biodiversity in the desert ecosystem, survival is very difficult even though desert are home to some of the plants and animals. And if you see the population diversity, this is very low because scarcity of water found and climate. And next move on to the hot and dry. So you have the type hot and dry, very low rainfall found in the Central America, South Asia, and then North America, Africa, Australia. Soil is very rough and harsh and semi-arid. So it has a hard rock and less sand. Example, great basins and receives lot of rain. In coastal region, example Namib in Africa, and present nearby oceans and seas and have more flora and fauna. And if you see the cold, abundant rainfalls during the winter and less during the summer, and chilling and snowfalls, example Greenland, Antarctica. So these are all the main key points. So based on that you can write about the ecosystem. Next move on to the aquatic ecosystem. So it is a water based environment, so you will have fresh water or salt waters will be used here, and this is the home for aquatic animals. More algae are present here. And if you see the type, marine type, that is 70% of earth it covers, and freshwater ecosystem, it covers less than 1% of earth's surface. And what is the main function? Helps to purify water and recharge the ground water. And energy flow, so already we discussed this one. Producer, primary consumer, and then primary carnivorous, and then the dead, the primary consumer, it leads to dead, and last it will go to the decomposer. So the bacteria and fungus will be there, again it will become the raw material and producers will be there. Okay. The next topic, biodiversity. So in the biodiversity, so it's all the different kind of life we will find in one area, that is animal, plants, fungi, microorganisms, species, etc. So it provides nourishment and housing, fuels, and then clothing. Then the types of biodiversity species, example human. So the two individuals of the same species are exactly similar. And if you see the genetics, it refers variation among genetic resources. For example, every human looks different from each other. And next one, ecological. It refers variation in plants and animal species that is living together. And what are the importance ecologically? Store energy, also produce and decompose organic matter. And if you see the economic importance, it is useful for the manufacture of food, cosmetic products, and you can make it as a national park and sanctuaries, or the source of tourism. And if you see the ethical importance, so biodiversity preserve different culture and spiritual heritage. And then traits of biodiversity, climate change, and then habitat loss and degradation, pollution, invasive species, and other potential threats like coronaviruses. And then conservations of biodiversity, so it refers to the protection and preservation and management of ecosystem. So what are the objectives? You have to protect and preserve the species. And what method you can use? You have biosphere reserve. So this is our national government site, and nearly you can see 5,000 square feet. So in this, natural habitats of animals are protected mostly. This is open for tourists and researcher. Example, Nanda Devi, Manas in India. These both are example. And the national park, you can see so many national parks are there. Occupy 100 to 500 square kilometer. So this is government approved, and total 104 national parks in India. So in this place, conservations of wildlife as well as environments are preserved. So in this place, the human activities such as grazing, forestry, habitat, and cultivations are restricted. For example, Gir, Kaziranga, Kanha. So these are all the national parks. And then wildlife sanctuaries. In this cultivation, wood collections are allowed, and tourist visits also allowed. And in total, 551 wildlife sanctuaries are in there in India. For example, Ghana bird sanctuaries. And next one, biodiversity hotspot. So this is a tourist place, and some research activities are allowed in this. Example, Himalaya Northeast. And next one, gene sanctuary. So this is reserved only for the plants. Example, Garo Hills in the Meghalaya. And then Scat Groves, it is conserved area for wildlife, and it is protected by the communities due to the religious belief. And then ex-situ conservations, artificial ecosystems like zoo and nurseries, potential gardens, advantage artificial breeding, species protected from poaching, and then strategies, conservations of ecosystem, and then reserve the decline of species, and killing animals can be prevented. And then the genetic techniques are used to preserve the endangered species. And then what is the need? It helps for healthy environment, smooth running food chains, availability of resources. The next topic, environmental pollution. So this is a contaminant into the natural environment, and pollutants means harmful effect. So you have some of the materials that is persistent. So for example, pesticide and nuclear waste, plastics, and non-persistent breakdown into the very simple form. And primary pollutant is DDT and plastic, and secondary pollutants nitric oxide and then hydrocarbon. And then air pollution, so it is the contaminant of air. And what are the control measures? First one, policy measures and selection of suitable fuel. And government initiatives, National Air Quality Monitoring Program. Next, move on to the water pollution. So this is an addition of organic, inorganic, biological, and radiological to the water. And what are the sources? Point source, that is a direct, and non-point diffuse sources. For example, mining, iron, steel, and then food, soap, detergents, and then thermal pollution, man-made pollution, oil spills. So these are all the examples for the diffuse sources. And what all the effects will be there? More mercury in water, what will happen? That leads to Minamoto disease. And in case of humans, dropsy, and in the fishes. And excess of nitrate in drinking water is dangerous for the infant, and also human health will be affected. And then excess fluoride causes neuromuscular disorders. And then what are the control measures? Recycling, avoid pesticides, and use natural organic farming. So the water pollution is very important. So what are the source? Point source, non-point. And what are the effects? So it affects the health condition. And what all the control measures are there? Next, move on to the soil pollution. Addition of unwanted substance to the soils, for example, fertilizer, pesticides, insecticides, and then deforestation. And what are the sources? Lead, cadmium, and mercury. And what effects are there? Release of gases, foul smell, And what are the control measures? Reforestation. Stop use the plastic bags. Incinerators you can use. And next one, marine pollution. This is known as the ocean pollution. So some of the oils, plastic, industrial and agriculture waste are mixing in that. And toxic metals and plastics also is there. So what are the causes? Sewage and toxic chemicals from industries and land runoff, that is fertilizer, petrols, pesticides, everything. And what all the effects are there? Methyl mercury, it will increase the risk for cardiovascular disease and dementia. If you see the infant, it affects the damage to the brain, and then autism also getting. And bisphenol, so this is released into the sea from plastic waste. And what will happen? It disrupts the endocrine signaling and it will reduce the male fertility. And then pathogenic marine bacteria, so this is causes gastrointestinal disease and deep wound infections it will produce. And how will prevent? Encourage organic farming, eco-friendly pesticides. So don't make your sewage, toxic chemicals, fertilizer, petroleums, don't mix it in the marine water. And next one, noise pollution. Unpleasant noise is created by machine and noise level over 75 decibel over this period of time it is affected. Then indoor sources, radio, TV, generator, electrica, fans, air cooler. And then outdoor sources like loudspeaker, industrial activities, automobiles. And what are the effects? Irritating, disturb sleep, hypertension, and then emotional, menstrual, then depressions, the damage to the materials of the building. Okay, then control, well maintained roads, smooth surface, and use of soundproof equipment like generators, maintenance of automobiles, and prohibitions of use of loudspeaker. The main important, green belt of trees. The next one, radioactive pollution. So it is an emissions of alpha, beta, gamma, and non-ionizing effects are only those components which can absorb them. And ionizing radiations, they ionize the atom and molecules of medium. And then if you see the sources, space, nuclear power plant, disposal of nuclear waste, uranium mining. And if you see the effects, destroy the cells and blood capillaries, and then sunburns, dead tissues, and death of organism. Sometimes cancer and tumors will be there. And control measures, leakage of radioactive elements should be checked. And so the proper educations you have to give, and then awareness, cost effective, and then technology, and then heat wave, acid rain should be avoided, and then ozone layer, waste land reclamation. So this is about the radioactive pollution. So far we discussed about the different types of pollution: water, soil, marine, noise, thermal, and radioactive pollution.